always wonderful to have colleagues and friends share Shabbat, and as you will see in the announcements, Rabbi David Seidenberg after Kiddush is going to share a really powerful, I think, shiur. I've heard some highlights from it on the whole concept of Jewish indigenous. I can't say the word, but you know what I mean. Indigenous. How do you say it? What is the word?
There's two words, indigenousness and indigeneity, and there's no difference between them.
Okay.
So you can use either one.
Indigeneity, or I can't say either one. But if you want to, after Kiddush, scheduled for 1:15, but at this rate it's probably going to be more like 1:30. But before that, a short Devar Torah from Rabbi.
There is a lot one could say about the part that we read in the Torah today. Can you all hear me okay? Do I need to speak louder? Okay. There's a lot one could say. There's a lot of things to talk about. I'm just going to pick two of them. So the two things I want to focus on are Moshe removing his shoes to stand on Admat Kodesh, holy ground, and also the significance of Moshe Haya Ro'eh. Moshe was a shepherd. So I want to do the second one first. It relates directly to some of the discussion about indigenousness that we'll have a little bit later. So I wonder if anyone has thought much about saying God is my shepherd, or God is our shepherd. Because, what do shepherds do with their sheep? Well, one thing is they lead them to still waters and green pastures, blah, blah, blah. But they also kill them and eat them. So, and we don't think of that immediately when we think of being a shepherd, in the same way that our ancestors would have known immediately. Obviously, if you're a shepherd, you're eating your sheep. You're killing them and eating them. And yet they still wanted God to be their shepherd. Isn't that a little strange? Like, no one's going to say, God is my meat packer. God forbid. So this is an interesting phenomena. And I've thought about it some, and I'll tell you what I've thought about, is that our ancestors' understanding of what it meant to be in relationship to their animals was very different than the way we think about it. So it's true that they ate their sheep. But the way it worked for them, as far as I can tell, is that they thought that they had a covenantal relationship with the animals that they had domesticated. So that they were responsible for making sure that those sheep had good lives, and also responsible for making sure that they had good deaths. So all the sheep are going to die eventually, whether you eat them or not. But some of them may die because they're torn up by wolves. Some of them may be because they get sick. They thought of a good death as one in which you were brought into death in a careful, considerate, thoughtful, and conscious way. And the human being is the person who did that for them. And so by taking responsibility for the lives of their sheep, they also had responsibility for the deaths. And that comes with eating your sheep. Right? So they understood, when they say God is my shepherd, that God is taking care of us through our lives and also carrying us in our deaths as well. And there's a little fact about it, shepherding that you may not know, that I only learned thinking about this question, which is that we also don't say God is my goat herd, right? Or God is my cowboy.
Out here they do.
They might. And there's something unique about herding sheep, which I learned about. I've never herded sheep, mind you, right? So this is all secondhand knowledge. But goats don't do what you tell them to do, and cows, you can drive them from behind, like with dogs and such. You can drive them, but that's not the same as leading them. Sheep, apparently, when you're a shepherd of sheep, they will listen to you, and they will even listen to you if you're behind them. They will lead you following your lead, as it were. And so their idea of their relationship to God is not just that God was their shepherd, but specifically that God could be, they could be in the front, leading where to go next, and God would be guiding them from behind. That there was a give and take, which was more, it's much more of a give and take. It's not God tells you what to do and you do it, but rather there's this relationship and communication going back and forth all the time between the sheep and the shepherd. So that's another reason why Moshe was a shepherd, and why that's what made him, or what signified that he was prepared, even though he didn't believe it, that he was prepared to be able to lead the people. also because he could lead from behind, also because he could take care of people and understand taking care of them in their lives and in their deaths. All of those things. So that's one thing about Moshe Haya Ro'eh. Then the other thing about removing your shoes, there's another point where this comes up in Midrash in a certain way. When Moshe is going to hit the rock to make water come out, which is in Exodus 17. Moshe doesn't remove his shoes there. But God says something interesting that the Midrash goes on a little trip with, which is that God says to Moshe, take your staff and pass over before the people, and take from the elders and go to the rock, and Hineni omed lefanecha sham. I am standing before you there at the rock. I am standing. And the Midrash is interested, what does it mean to say God is standing there before you and in front of the rock or by the rock? And it says cryptically, I think, any place you find Roshem Raglei Adam, the impression of human feet, that the Shekhinah is there. So that when God said, I'm standing before you, what that meant is not that God would be standing there like a person, but rather when Moshe got to the rock, he would see God's footprints, which were like human footprints. Whatever that means. I don't really know what that Midrash exactly is trying to say. But what makes me think about is a lot of different things about how we can be in the world in a better way. Right? So specifically, like, what does it mean to leave footprints? What does it mean to take your shoes off? It means to be sensitive to the earth underneath your feet. It means to feel the earth when you leave an impression. It's an impression that's an impression made on you and not just on the earth because of your bare feet touching the ground. And I was just thinking about that statement, take only photos, leave only footprints. That's actually not a good way to be in the world. Not actually, because we want to be engaged with the world in order to heal it, not just to pretend like we don't exist. And this was one of the big learnings in the past some decades about how Native American culture worked. They didn't live in harmony with nature because they left it alone. They lived in harmony with the earth around them because they were actively engaged with managing and being involved in that earth, right? So they lit fires, for example, when there was low amounts of firewood, whatever the right term is for that. What is the right term?
Fuel.
Combustibles, fueled on the ground, and that would give you fires that weren't raging, and it would also clear out space for animals to come in. Large animals who were able to live off of what grew up from the plants that grew up from those fires. And that in a way is a little bit also like being a shepherd. Like you create the space for the animals to thrive in that way. And so that brings up another point about indigeneity, which I wanted to spotlight, which is that depending on your ecosystem, what it looks like to live sustainably is going to be radically different. So in many parts of this continent, the best way to live sustainably was through hunting. In ancient Israel, that was not a way to live. That would not work. It would simply destroy all the animals. It doesn't have that kind of abundance to be able to sustain a hunting culture. But it did have enough pasture to sustain a shepherding culture, which is why our metaphors come from shepherding. Yeah. So Moshe is asked to take off his shoes, which means he's leaving his own footprints there. So if we could go back to that spot where that bush was, in theory, we could find Moshe's footprints. And we could look at them and say, this was where the Shekhinah was, because we saw his footprints. And there's more to say, but I think that's enough for a short Devar. I will just say one more thing, which is the other thing I think about when I think about this is Buzz Aldrich's footprint on the moon. And what it means for humans to leave their presence in a way that brings glory and beauty and honor to the place instead of destroying the places, which is usually what we end up doing by trampling as opposed to leaving soft footprints in the world. So Shabbat Shalom.